Good evening and welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. Since the fatal police shootings of Chantel Moore and Rodney Levi in New Brunswick almost 2 months ago, First Nations leaders have asked to lead an independent inquiry into systemic racism in the justice system. Jake Stewart, the province's Indigenous Affairs Minister, is supporting their call. On Wednesday, Wolastoqey chiefs applauded Stewart for supporting their demand for an Indigenous-led inquiry. Last month, the chiefs met with New Brunswick Premier Blaine Higgs, but their request was not granted. In their statement Wednesday, the chiefs called Minister Stewart's support powerful message of hope to our people. Nova Scotia Premier Stephen McNeil announced today he is stepping down as Premier. He decided it's time for a change after 17 years in provincial politics. McNeil, who was elected Premier in 2013 and re-elected in 2017, says he will stay on until the party chooses his replacement. He says he had initially planned to leave in April, but the COVID-19 pandemic postponed those plans. The announcement caught people by surprise, and McNeil says he only advised his own caucus of the decision this morning. The Ontario Provincial Police enforced an injunction at a Landback protest camp yesterday that resulted in blocked roads and arrests. 218 homes are set to be built at the Mackenzie Meadows construction site in Caledonia. The site has formal support from Six Nations elected Chief and Council, but the land defenders say Chief and Council do not represent a majority in Six Nations. 9 people were arrested, including Skylar Williams, an organizer who I spoke to earlier today. Skylar, thanks for joining us. Why does the 1492 Landback Lane camp oppose the development while elected Chief and Council do support it?
So there's a long answer to that, and so trying to shorten it up as best I can. The 2006, there was a Douglas Creek Estates happened directly across the road from where this development is going on. Our people come in here July 19th and took over the development site and have said from the very beginning that the development that's going on here on the doorstep of our community won't be happening. The Band Council had agreed in part to accept some money for this development going on. The Band Council had, in their last election, 4% of our community turnout of its possible 27,000 voters. So 4% of our community feels that the Band Council is their voice within the Canadian government. And the other 96%, well, we don't. There are very documentable ways that the governments have, and RCMP and most recently the OPP, have tried to drive wedges between different families and groups and in our community. We've been here for 19 days now and are standing strong here in Landback Lane because we feel that because of all of those wedges that the government and police and different forms of enforcement have gone and spent those last 100 years driving those wedges. So if we need the next 100 years to be able to heal and grow and do the things that we need to do as a community, to have one voice, to feel like everybody in our community is heard. And because that's the thing, is everybody in our community needs to have a voice in this. We as a community need to be able to decide for ourselves whether or not we want development rolling up on the doorstep of our community.
What can you tell us about the arrests that happened yesterday?
So yesterday, let's see, it goes to Friday. Friday they came and read an injunction that the developer received from a court in Cayuga, which is right along the banks of the river as well. So the Haldeman Tract is our traditional territory, which is up and down the Grand River, 6 miles on either side. It goes from just west of Toronto in the north to Port Maitland in the south. And the injunction was read out last Friday. The OPP called me directly and said that we are going to come back. This was yesterday. They said that they were going to come back and read some additional information for the injunction. And so when they came back, they read the injunction again, but had blocked the roads and any access points for our people in our community to come in. then the OPP lined up across the driveway, about 80 to 100 tactical unit OPP officers, and they started walking through the camp. Our people backed up. There was rubber bullets that were fired at our people that were, up until that point, had been peaceful. There was no arguing with the developer. There was no arguing with the police. There was no violence on our side whatsoever. When the police came, very heavy-handedly, and pushed our people back, a number of our people were able to get back and get out of harm's way. Some of us weren't so lucky and had rubber bullets fired at us, narrowly missing myself and a few of my brothers. And then I was arrested, as well as 8 others.
So, Skylar, what is happening now?
So after we were arrested and taken away, it was about a 5-hour processing. I got out of the Cuga detachment, OPP detachment, and everybody said that the community came out and there's highways blocked, there's trains blocked, there's roads blocked, and everybody asked me what I wanted to do, and I said I wanted to go back to my tent. I said that if our community feels like we're safe and not going to have violence brought into the camp again by the OPP, that we're going to stay in at 1492 Landback Lane. That's our address here. We've renamed our road, and as long as we're safe here, then we have no reason to have any violence of any kind from our side. Right now, as of like this moment, the Highway 6 running along the Six Nations of Grand River Reserve, Highway 6 is closed. The train tracks that run through the reserve is closed, and Argyle Street that runs from the reserve into Caledonia is also closed.
All right, thanks, Skylar. That's Skylar Williams joining us from Six Nations territory in Ontario. Ontario Premier Doug Ford is weighing in on the occupation in Caledonia, calling the actions taken by demonstrators wrong. Ford says it's a few bad apples who are disputing the construction site.
These people put their whole life savings to buy a home, and then someone comes in and just says, I'm taking over. It's just wrong. There's one country, one law, respect each other. And when the Indigenous communities or Roseanne or anyone asks me for something, I say, they say jump, I say oh hi. As soon as they ask for something, bang, I'm on it within a second. And I have a great...
The Premier is referring to Assembly of First Nations Ontario Regional Chief Roseanne Archibald in his comments there. The Hamilton area man who was acquitted of killing a Six Nations man in 2016 is going to have his day in the Supreme Court of Canada. Peter Cahill was acquitted in the second-degree murder of Jon Styres of Six Nations of the Grand River, but that verdict was overturned, and Ontario's Court of Appeal ordered a new trial, arguing that the judge had failed to instruct the jury about Cahill's role in the confrontation. Cahill claimed he acted in self-defense when shooting Styres in the chest. The Supreme Court of Canada has agreed to review Cahill's appeal request. It's time for a short break, but still ahead, at least 2 First Nations communities in Quebec reported their first cases of COVID-19 in the last week. We'll have the details after the break. Beginning in the east, 25 in St. John's and 29 in Halifax, 28 in Cloud and Happy Valley Goose Bay and 23 in Cartwright, 26 in Sun in Quebec City and 26 in Sun in Val-d'Or, 26 in a mix of Sun and Cloud in Peterborough and 27 in Sarnia, 23 degrees in Sun and Cloud in Wawa and 28 in Cloud in Thunder Bay, 31 in Sun in Thompson and 31 in Sun in Norway House, 30 degrees in Princess Harbor and 30 degrees in Winnipeg, 24 in Swift Current and 28 in Yorkton, 30 degrees in Sun in Stony Rapids and 28 in La Grange. Welcome back. A recent survey shows 1 in 4 Quebecers feel the COVID-19 pandemic is a hoax. But for many, the threat is still very real. At least 2 First Nations communities in Quebec reported their first cases of COVID-19 in the last week. Other communities are doubling down in response. Lindsay Richardson explains.
The Innu Music and Cultural Festival, held annually in Sept-Îles, normally draws a considerable crowd. This year, performances were streamed online due to COVID-19 concerns. But addressing community members in a live stream this week, Chief Mike McKenzie confirmed a woman from another community came to the territory of Wahatmak Maniutnam for Innu. She tested positive for the virus after making contact with at least 20 people attending watch parties. All those exposed are now ordered to self-isolate at home. I understand the situation requires sacrifices that aren't always easy, but it's the only way to get through this crisis, said McKenzie in a statement. It is our responsibility to keep our guards very high. The Innu community of Pessamit is also on watch. They've responded with new restrictions. Members can come and go, but non-members now have to request entry to the community 48 hours in advance. The woman in question is believed to be from Wimotashi, an Atikamek community that until now has not seen a case of COVID-19. They maintain checkpoints at the community's borders, even as the rest of Quebec opened up. Council is now asking for cooperation as they collaborate with public health in light of the news. Further south, the Mohawk community of Ganazadage has at least 5 confirmed cases of COVID-19. They're ramping up on-site testing due to an unexpected demand. Emergency officials say they're even impressed by the community's response.
Not only did you hear our message, you responded better than anyone could have ever hoped.
Ganawage near Montreal has not seen a case of COVID-19 in over a month, but they're opting to keep bars and gaming halls closed for the time being, even though Quebec now says it's allowing gatherings of up to 250 people.
Given what's happening around us, specifically a spike in 3-digit numbers of infections, given the occurrences in the other countries, the task force did not feel comfortable at this point moving ahead.
While Quebec braces for a second wave, many communities are experiencing their first. These recommendations remain. Wear a mask, wash your hands, and most importantly, keep your distance. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Montreal.
Manitoba is reporting 30 new cases of COVID-19, the province's second highest single-day rise. That includes 18 linked to a cluster in Brandon, a city of just 48,000 people.
Cluster altogether, there are 28 cases, 18 of which were reported yesterday. And so those aren't community-based transmission. That cluster actually started with a travel-related case from out east. But I don't have, other than that, I don't have a specific number on how many would be, none of those would be considered community-based transmission.
474 people in Manitoba have tested positive for COVID-19 since the pandemic began. And a 6-year-old Leon Thunderchild went missing June 23rd. He was last seen playing on a sandbar in Makwa Lake, Saskatchewan. The community has been looking for him ever since. Yesterday, the search came to an end when his body was located over a kilometer away from where he was last seen. RCMP believes Thunderchild drowned after being swept away in the water when he was playing on the sandbar. For the last 44 days, the family has been searching for him with the help of Loon Lake RCMP and several volunteers. The Mitsuing Thunderchild family are not speaking to media, but they did release a statement stating that they would like to thank all who helped in the search and are now planning funeral arrangements. A Manitoba bead worker whose art was worn by Whoopi Goldberg last winter and was featured on APTN's In Focus is now facing some legal issues. Michelle Daniels, known as Mish Daniels on social media, gained popularity after Whoopi Goldberg wore one of her medallions on the American TV show The View. Orders came flooding in, but soon people were complaining that they paid deposits but never got their orders. Daniels said she fell behind from the influx of orders. She was arrested by RCMP in Manitoba a few days ago after several complaints were made and is set to appear in court in October. No charges have been filed at this time. It's time for one more break, but still to come. Minister of Northern Affairs Dan Vandal joins us to discuss the airline industry in northern and remote communities. Over in Western Canada now, 25 in Fort Chipewyan and 20 degrees in Grand Prairie. 23 in sun in Lethbridge and 20 in clouds in Calgary. 23 in a mix of sun and cloud in Penticton and 19 in Quesnel. 16 in clouds in Prince George and 21 in a mix of sun and cloud in Fort Nelson. 15 in Dawson and 16 in Whitehorse. 22 in sun and cloud in Fort Simpson and 23 in sun and cloud in Trout Lake. 16 in Colville Lake and 19 in Fort McPherson. 19 degrees in Baker Lake and 11 in Repulse Bay. 4 degrees in Resolute and 7 in Arctic Bay. Welcome back. The pandemic has decimated the airline industry, especially the small carriers that service northern and remote communities. Today, the federal government announced help. To speak more about it, we're joined by Northern Affairs Minister Dan Vandal from his constituency office in Winnipeg. Minister Vandal, thank you for joining us. What is the federal government proposing to help these smaller air carriers, and why is it needed?
Well, listen, we know that the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, has created all sorts of difficulties for the airline industry, especially the small air carriers whose service is essential to make sure that the supply chains of food, of medicines are uncompromised and not broken. So today we announced $75 million of investment for small airlines that service northern properties, northern areas. So that's something that's that is incredibly positive. It's going to take us till the end of the year, and overall there's an investment, a potential investment of $174 million over the next 18 months if needed.
And this is a partnership with the provinces and territories. What role are they playing in this?
Well, it's essential that we have provinces and territories at the table contributing as well. So the public service of the Minister of Transportation, Marc Garneau, will be negotiating with all the provinces, all the territories on how this is going to roll out. And so that's something that is important. We know that this is a Canada-wide issue, but it's also a provincial territorial issue. Most of the isolated areas are in the territories. However, there's about 20 in Manitoba and over 20 in Quebec and Ontario as well. So we need provinces at the table as well.
Nunavut earmarked $24 million back in June to prop up airlines servicing the territory. Does this new funding replace or complement what they've spent?
It complements it. If you'll remember, back in April, the federal government also invested over $17 million in airline support for the 3 territories. So that was something that was essential to do at that point. We know that, as I earlier stated, we can't sever those supply chains. So our initial investment was $17 million. That took us till the end of June. This $75 million will take us from July 1 to the end of the year. And in partnership with provinces and territories, and if needed, we can continue the partnership for another year after that. And we have upwards of $174 million to invest with airlines in partnership with territories and provinces if it's needed. We're hoping that the recovery will be faster than that, and we're hoping that, of course, that the money won't be needed, but it's something that is really really very important for the North. It's a good news story. We know that isolated communities rely on air transport for food and for medical supplies, and that's the sort of thing that we can't sever those supply chains. So we have to be there, and we are there.
And some say it will take years for the airline industry to get back to normal. What will Ottawa do if that's the case?
Well, listen, we are here for the long term. We understand we are in unprecedented times. Our government has taken unprecedented measures to support Canadians across the country and in the North, and we're going to be there for the long term. We're going to do what it takes to make sure that Northerners and Canadians have the supports they need to make it to the other side of this pandemic.
And switching gears for just a moment, your government recently struck a deal with Alberta to cut back on environmental monitoring of the tar sands, including dumping effluent into the Athabasca River. How is that environmentally responsible?
Well, I don't have that information in front of me. I understand that Minister Wilkinson has addressed that yesterday. It was not a deal to reduce the monitoring of the effects of the oil and gas industry in Alberta, but that's something that I will defer to Minister Wilkinson to comment on. But I can tell you that our government is committed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions over the long term. We're committed to be net zero by 2050, and that's going to take a lot of work and a lot of partnerships with all the provinces, as well as the oil and gas industry. But for further comment on that in detail, I would go to the minister responsible.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Minister Vandal, for joining us. That is Minister Dan Vandal.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And before we leave you tonight, the Calgary Zoo is sounding the alarm over the welfare of two giant pandas. The zoo has been desperately trying to return Ershun and Damao to China since May. The pandas were on loan to the zoo. Not only has COVID-19 created problems in shipping their food source, which is bamboo, but the pandemic has also prevented the zoo from sourcing the necessary travel permits to get them home. The zoo's chief operating officer says they're in need of a hero.
The import permits have to come out of China, and we have to get health permits out of Canada. We have to get transportation permits out of Canada. So there's the two governments have to work together, which normally isn't a significant problem. But in this day and age, with COVID going on, all the governments are readdressing their import and export requirements, and it's just causing a lot of delays.
The zoo is currently sourcing bamboo for the pandas from British Columbia, but they say that supply is only expected to last until September. Hopefully that can get sorted out very soon. That's been your look at APTN National News for this Thursday. For more Indigenous news, you can visit our website at aptnnews.ca. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us and have a great night.